It's 7 p.m. and it's Tuesday night. I got my laptop on and I feel alright. I got a few joints rolled and my munchies made. Got my headphones on and I close the door, don't disturb me. It's time to stand up tall and say some things about the shitty world we're living in with the boys at Raconteurs News. To Raconteurs, Raconteurs, to Raconteurs, Raconteurs, to Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News. Oh yeah.
Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. It's Tuesday night and my name's Andy Young. Normally you'd be expecting Jason. Sorry folks, but Jason is not in the best of health this week, and we've suggested that he have a night off and take it easy. But he's been Jason, always committed to the cause. He's there in the background, and he's our social media manager tonight. He's putting this out live on Facebook Live, so welcome Facebook, as well as all the members who are in the chat room on Raconteurs News. I'm joined tonight by our new member of the team, or new regular member of the team, Paul Webster. Good evening, Paul. How you doing, pal?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Excellent. So, I don't know if you've got anything you want to say before we bring the guests on, Paul?
No, it's something, the information, I've been looking at Gordon's stuff for quite a while now, and it's very interesting. It's going to be the first time I've managed to speak to him, so I'm looking forward to what he's got for us, Andy, really.
Excellent. So without further ado, I'll give a big Raconteurs warm welcome back to Gordon Bowden. Good evening, Gordon. How the devil are you?
Good evening, Andy. I'm fine. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. We one or two ups and downs, and as always, when we get you guys on, it's a bit chaotic. So what we've done, we've just got a couple of members on the call now, and firstly, what I'd like you to do is, for those of our listeners that are not familiar with yourself and Pandora's Box, just give them a brief outline of what you're all about. And then I believe you've got some fantastic news to share with us.
Well, I hope so for any of your listeners that want a bit of understanding of how you can steal billions and get away with it. It's some good news coming out of America at the moment. To give you a brief overview, I started this sort of crusade about 16 years ago when my partner lost a lot of money, life savings. And it also included about 800 others in South Africa that were conned in a capital venture fraud. However, I did the money trail back with 2 attorneys of law and then incorporated the South African Anti-Corruption Police, the Scorpions, and thereafter the South African Special Investigations Unit, who worked on the case for about 5 years. And then I found out some of the people involved in the fraud were actually in the Scorpions and the police. So,
a bit of a conflict of interest going on there then. Oh, have we lost Gordon?
So you still there?
Yeah, we're still here, Gordon. Carry on, mate.
Yeah, it's just I'm getting a poor connection indicator. So if I drop out, just bear with it. So what I've been doing over the last 16 years is a very simple thing. It's called follow the money, to identify the scallywags that were operating out of the United Kingdom. Yeah, it's been a journey, and I've picked up a lot of good people along the way, most of whom are in Pandora's Box investigations now. But Yeah, one of the companies that I've followed to expose how you can steal billions of pounds in the United Kingdom is a company called Anglesey Mining PLC, which for 34 years has never mined, a teaspoonful of dirt. Never mind run anything as a corporate asset mining company with subsidiaries in the United States, Canada, Sweden, that have never mined anything, and yet you can get away with stealing millions. Is that a good description?
Sounds like a good place to launder money then, that, Gordon.
Well, it is because I've been focusing on Anglesey Mining. What I found is that when you understand how to dismantle a company using its own documents, they actually print their own prosecution material. And the brokers for Anglesey Mining were a company called Beaufort Security. And in the last 4 days, the Department of Justice in the United States has listed 6 individuals and 4 corporate defendants in a $50 million international securities fraud and money laundering schemes using these shell companies. They actually tried to purchase a Picasso painting from an undercover FBI agent, which didn't turn out very well for him. But it all links back to Anglesey Mining and other companies who Beaufort Securities and their spin-offs are acting as brokers for. And they're the same companies that I've accused of being Ponzi scams. So things are happening across the pond, so to speak.
Yeah, it does seem like there's quite a bit coming out of the States at the moment. Some of the lads that I'm in touch with, they're talking all about the Ponzi schemes and the hedge funds, and people are actually waking up to see what's going on there. And as you said, the best thing that you could ever do is follow that money. It takes you straight to the source.
Yeah, well, because I was an engineer in the RAF for 12 years, and then I worked for Goldfields of South Africa for 6 years as a mining engineer, working on the HVAC and refrigeration systems. One of the deepest gold mines in the world with 27,000 staff. So not something that you find in the side of the hillside in Wales, which has operated for 34 years, asset stripping hundreds of millions. It's a joke. You know, the police in the United Kingdom are supposed to be the best, and the Serious Fraud Office, Secret Service, they're either complicit or Pink Panther, Inspector Clouseau police. You know, the meat and two veg police who arrest people for not having a driving license or breaking open cash machines in shops 2 o'clock in the morning with a tractor. I said, I've got every respect for the police, but this is fraud, theft and money laundering on an industrial scale where they're turning their backs on it because of who's involved. And I include members of the royal family, and I include many members of the House of Lords, MPs, who are all listed as non-executive directors. People like Nadeem Zahawi, Home Secretary Amber Augusta Rudd. They're all named. I've named them. Let them take me to court. Then the Pandora's box will open. Well, Tony Blair. How high do you want to go?
Oh,
Tony
there's
Blair.
a name to conjure with, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the war criminal. Yeah. Yeah, so I can name individual members of the House of Lords who are inducted as non-executive directors into these Ponzi scam fake oil, gas and mining companies purely to give them a semblance of respectability. And when you see those names listed next to a company, the individual investors have great faith in the integrity of that company. And this is the failure of our Financial Conduct Authority and the government. And the reason Theresa May and even Jeremy Corbyn are refusing to act on this is because it links to very senior Labour MPs and Conservative MPs. That's why. But as I said, from across the pond, we're seeing action where the Financial Conduct Authority are now having to link in to the, to the prosecution services in the United States Department of Justice. I'm not going to let this rest. I'm just going to keep pushing it with the knowledge that the information that I've gathered over 16 years is very accurate, because I wouldn't be sticking my head on a block if it wasn't.
No, of course not. That would be
That's the whole point to this, isn't it, Gordon? That you actually, if these people, whoever they may be, I mean, not just the ones that you're naming, but what we'd call the establishment, if these people wanted to put a stop to what you're doing, they would just take you into these courts and let it all fall how it lies. But the fact is that I know personally that you've taken quite a bit of flack over this, and I always know that if you're taking flack, you're over the target. You are over that.
Well, you see my introduction photograph on Skype. That's the armourers at RAF Larbrook. And there we had big things that would cause big blue blinding flashes where you could stick your head between your legs and kiss your backside goodbye. But on the other side of sticking my head out, I've been threatened by some of the top lawyers in the United Kingdom, Memory Crystal, who threatened to take me to court in 2013 if I didn't remove my stuff from the internet. Well, it's still there. It's still there. And the reason is the people that they were acting on behalf of were two gentlemen. One was Peter Neil Landau, who has had his assets frozen in Australia. And the other guy, a Ghanaian, Sir Samuel S. and Jonah. I think the more you steal, the higher up you get rewarded.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, Gordon. So we've had you on the show. I've lost count of the number of times. Probably at least half a dozen, haven't we, over the few years that we've been going. I understand tonight you've been saving something rather special to share with us and our listeners.
Yeah, that's the news coming out of the United States, which is Beaufort Securities have been nailed in the States for money laundering, which is the corporate broker for Anglesey Mining. So what I'm seeing is the authorities acting on correspondence I've passed to them, which has been sort of corroborated by their referrals to me, that they cannot reveal the depth of their investigations as it may jeopardize any court prosecutions. And I understand that because I've been in the court for plus minus 6 years with Andrea Davison, who fled the country, and she's linked to this very same network.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 100%, because her admin companies came out of 665 Finchley Road, and its previous address was 788 790 Finchley Road, which has always been my target, because that's where I started in South Africa 2002. So it's just, as I said, follow the money. Very simple thing.
Do you find that the Ponzi schemes and the hedge funds that you've been looking into, is it asset stripping?
It's asset stripping.
I see this quite a bit because, as you said, Tony Blair, he was what, £120,000 a year job. All of a sudden, he's a millionaire. Sherry Blair, we know that she's involved with the SPVs in securitisations and mortgages. So they're all using foundations and charities and trusts to siphon all this stuff off. And like you said, all these shell companies, they're nothing. They're absolutely nothing. It's an address or it's a computer terminal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying to you is that people who struggle in their daily life to earn a pittance to be able to exist, what they're doing is that they haven't got time to do this. I'm a silly old fart now. I'm retired, but I have that time and the experience as an engineer to be able to dismantle very complex systems. And what I'm doing is I'm exposing these companies, and I can expose thousands who are all part of this industrial organized crime system. And when you dismantle each company and each director to look at their directorships, you see the extent of this industrial scale asset stripping. So when you follow look at those companies, there will be things that stick out as being not coincidence. They're all operating out of the same sequence of addresses. And those are the ones that I call boiler rooms, because when you look at them, like 788, 790 Finchley Road, from that address operated 209,000 shell companies. And the reason Tony Blair, David Cameron, Theresa May, Amber Rudd won't touch it is because they're all linked to that address. That's hearsay, that's not conspiracy, is fact. And these are the people that send people like myself as a young man to war. That's the people who need to be exposed for their skullduggery and their nefarious interactions with these Ponzi scam companies that operate transcontinentally, because they're operating out of Australia, they're operating out of Canada, they're operating out of South Africa. And there was me for 12 years with commendation, believing in the integrity of the government to which I went all over the world for. That's the kick in the guts for me. And I'm sure any policeman or armed forces member would understand you're there to protect this country, much the same as the police are there to protect and serve, without favor, without fear or favor. And yet here we are finding out some of the most corrupt people within the United Kingdom are senior police officers, members of the military, and politicians, and some royalty, which I could name. I could name them.
Yeah,
but
that is certainly a big wake-up call for people who are new to this information, and even those that are already familiar with it. We have got an excellent question being posted on Facebook, one of the Facebook Live listeners, and I'll read that out if I may, Gordon.
Yeah, of course.
It's John Hall. And John, thank you for all the encouraging comments that you're posting on Raconteurs, and all the sharing you're doing, helping get the word out. It's very much appreciated, my friend. But John wants to know, Gordon, how can temple secretaries have an interest in many companies but only be registered as company secretary for one day? How does that actually work?
Drop out.
Hello, Gordon. Are you still
the
there?
entity. Hello?
Sorry, we lost you for a second, Gordon.
Yeah. I said it's a poor network connection. It's coming up on my phone. So temple secretaries, company directors, A1 company secretaries, A1 nominees, BC Business Centrum, they all operated out of 788, 790 Finchley Road, with a closed network of individuals who are the admin agencies, directors. And what they did was, the first prime mover was a woman called Barbara Javid Kahan. She was born in 1931. And when you understand how you dismantle company directors, temple secretaries, BC Centrum, what you see is the extended network of how many shell companies that they were registering in the UK in Companies House. Some were only registered for one day, but the people that I followed, the companies that I followed, sometimes they were secretaries and in Companies House. Some were only registered for one day, but the people that I...
Hey, Andy, I think we might just have a problem.
Yeah, I think we're losing Gordon, Jason, because your mic seems to be picking the conversation up. Can you mute unless you want to say anything?
My mic's
please,
muted. I'm muted.
Oh,
my mic's
okay.
muted.
Sorry about that.
It's. I think we've got another open mic. I've been monitoring. Both mics seem to be open at the other at the time that the other person is talking. So I think you probably just give a couple of a bit more instruction on that. But I promise you, my mic's muted.
Okay, Dave. Yeah, it looks like we're getting feedback from your mic. So if you could mute while Gordon's talking, and then just unmute when you talk yourself, please, mate. Right, has Gordon dropped off the call again? Flipping heck. This is certainly challenging. These large group calls always are. Let's see if we can add Gordon back in. Yeah, he's dropped off the call. We'll try and get him back. Sorry about this, folks. This is the joys of live radio. But you are listening.
I think we can hear somebody. I think there's somebody in the background doing the washing up with their mic live, and that keeps interrupting and perhaps feeding back. So I don't know who that is. So
Definitely not me this time, lads. I'm muted.
No, that's David's.
No, that's me. You're on mute. On mute.
Thanks, David. Oh, it appears we're having trouble getting Gordon back on. He's ringing and ringing, so I think his network connection must have slipped a little bit. Paul, you've obviously, like I have, looked at Gordon's stuff over the years. I mean, it's astonishing what Gordon's uncovered, and not just Gordon, but his whole team of investigators. Perhaps you'd like to, until we get Gordon on, David, could you unmute and come on and say a few words?
Is that for David?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Andy and Paul.
Hi,
Is
mate.
it Paul?
Hi, guys.
Hi,
David, you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's Paul, isn't it?
It is, mate, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what it is, I mean, I've been working with Gordon now for, it's at least 3 years. It's probably nearer 4 years now. And I mean, I'm still learning a lot of the information that Gordon's got. But it's absolutely incredible. I mean, the more I'm learning, the more amazing it just seems to get, because it brings in the Clinton Foundation, it brings in the Bushes, Blair, Gordon Brown, anybody in power is linked into this. It all feeds through London. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still.
Yeah, you're still there, David. Carry on, pal.
Yeah, I think we've got Gordon back
as
well.
It all feeds. It all feeds through London. So if there's a war somewhere, so they'll start a war somewhere in Iraq or Syria. They're trying to get back into Syria now, aren't they? You know, and Ukraine and places like this. They want to kick it off in North Korea. All this kind of stuff. What you've got to remember is they're trying to make money, because it's all about money. What we do is follow the money. That's what the company's doing. So what we do is we trail it all. We trail it all. We go through company documents, and we see all the linkages between different individuals, and we see the patterns, and it all runs through through London, through Manchester, through Bristol, through Edinburgh, 50 Lothian Road. And when you see it, it's like a spider's web. It's literally like a spider's web. And right at the centre of it all are the Rothschilds. And that goes, so it'll go through, it might go through Manchester or Bristol or Edinburgh, but then it gets siphoned through London. It's the most corrupt city in the world. And then it goes off into offshore accounts. And then when it ends up in these offshore accounts, what happens is it's all broken down by people like groups like Temple Secretaries, and they fragment it or they send it off in amounts through shell companies in amounts below £1 million, so that the Serious Fraud Office, the Financial Conduct Authority, and these groups, who incidentally, there's crooks in there as well, and they're in there to stop people from taking a really good close look at it. Same as in the judiciary and in the police force. They've got people in these organisations that are stopping people like us from getting the information out. But anyway, so it gets fragmented. You have formation companies like Temple Secretaries, Centrum, all these kind of groups. And then it gets fragmented, and then it's sent off to places like Bermuda and the Cayman Isles and all different places. And then what happens is, over there, then the money's divvied out. and it's sent off into bank accounts without names on them. So they think they can't be traced, but it can. And this is where the thing with the Americans now, the Department of Justice and the Security Exchange Commission in America, they're getting involved now. Well, you already know that Gordon's been sending information out to ALP services, which linked into Anne Laverone and Samuel S. and Jonah and people like this. And then you've got the Australian connection that started out through 34 Parliament Place in Perth. It all links together, and what's happening, all this money. So you have drugs trade, you have wars, you have, even in this country, if you look at a company like I think it's called the Duncan Partnership, you look at that and you take a look down there, and it's at Cornwall, at Northumberland, at. Now we think, well, in fact, Gordon said it's true. What they are is they're siphoning taxes off, the taxes that we pay. So all that's getting taken. Not only that, but then you get the other stuff, which is like, companies like the other things that they do might pump and dump, through these oil and gas companies. They'll pump and dump, so they'll have people in the chats on the chat sites who are pumping up a company, even if it's just something like Anglesey Mining, which is just a rusty old mine. That's all it is, and it's been like that for 30, 34, 35 years now. They haven't mined anything for that period of time. So not only are they pumping and dumping to try and get people to put money into Anglesey Mining, but you've also got the council as well providing grants. Yeah, so you've got that side of it as well. But then you've got money getting laundered through these shell companies as well. And this is where the groups like Temple Secretary and company directors, and there's many more. There's Form 10. There's Form 10. There's lots of them, and this is what they're all doing. But ultimately, they're all working for the Rothschilds out of 6 St James's Place. But then it goes out from there into the other Rothschilds as well, and all the banking cartel who are working for the Rothschilds as well. So it's incredible. So what we think of as a democratic process is a lot of rubbish. What's happening is that we get something, the left and the right and things like this. The party of the left and the party of the right. It's all a con game. It's all set up to make people think that there's some kind of democratic process actually working, but it isn't true. It's not true.
So the Anglesey Mining Company, then, they're actually inviting investors to invest in a mining company that isn't mining anything. So therefore, they're putting in clean money, and then the dirty money's getting cleaned up with that money and then distributed to, like you say, the other Rothschilds foundations.
That's it in a nutshell. But it's not just that, because there's other money's getting washed through the system as well. If you imagine, I mean, you've got accountants and formation companies and things like this who are specialised in moving this money through these companies, through these shell companies as well. I mean, Gordon said that there's 250,000 shell companies. When he comes back on, he'll tell you exactly. I mean, there's many, many more than that. And you imagine how much money is getting moved, either taken off taxpayers or out of banks and things like that. You've heard of RBS and all these groups and Carillion and things like this. These companies are all collapsing.
I believe, I don't know if you've heard anything possibly even better than I have, but I believe Centrica, not Centrica, Capita are the ones who are wobbling at the minute, like Carillion.
Well, I haven't heard about that because I'm just basically I'm working directly with Gordon, and I don't really get a chance to look at newspapers too much until it's come up. But yeah, I can imagine it's true. And you've got Tata Steel, you've got all these different ones. And what's happening, what it is you have directors, right? and they play musical chairs. You know, these CEOs of companies, you'll see that they move from one company to another one, and then to another one, and to another one. And one of their pals moves into the company that they've just vacated. So they're just moving around and moving the assets around, and then stripping everything out and sending it offshore. That's what they do. Or they use that money to invest in, or they'll use it to invest in things like BAE systems, you know, weapons manufacturers and things like this. We don't even know we're born. Honestly, we don't. We don't know we're born.
I totally agree with you. David. The last 10 years have been absolutely mind-blowing for me. People don't understand it. It's certainly not the world I grew up in, mate.
No.
Oh, it looks like we've got Gordon back on.
All the models have gone and everything. It's just ridiculous.
Welcome back, Gordon.
And then you can look at...
Yeah, thanks. The call keeps dropping out.
Right.
Yeah, it's always a difficulty with large group calls on Skype, but we'll persevere and we'll do our best.
I don't know if you can, if you reconfigure just to, if you want to call me, is call my mobile number rather than run it through Skype, if you can do that.
I haven't got enough credit to do that, I'm afraid, Gordon.
I'll send you a quid. Hang on.
Yeah, I'll give you a £5, Andy.
Yeah, just put your hand out and catch.
That's something we'll maybe try and do for another time, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'd say I missed most of what was said after. I'm sure David has given a good overview, but I say I don't know what's been discussed when I've
just gone over generally. Can you hear me, Gordon?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I've just generally gone over my views of how the world really works, basically, with the knowledge I've got now from working with you. You know, I've talked about wars, drugs, and all this kind of stuff. I've mentioned the Clinton Foundation. We're not in great depth, but we know that goes into 788, Finchley Road. But it's now closed. You know, that's moved to.
They had to do a runner. They had to shut it down because the internet is a magnificent tool for what we call in the military pinging. When you get pinged, it's like ASDEC radar systems is when you identify a target as a military man and you see the weakness, you keep banging on it, and that's what I've been doing since 2006. I've been called everything. I've been called a racist, anti-Semitic. Welsh. I've been called Welsh, yeah, I know, especially after the rugby. But I'm actually come from Bideford in Devon, the family. Such is the lies told to me by my father. But however, so once you identify a weakness within a system, all you got to do is keep hammering it, and that's what I've been doing with Finchley Road. Finchley Road is an epicenter. It's not the only one. There are multiple others, like 6 to 8 Underwood Street, 145 to 157 St John Street, 50 Lothian Road, 50 Broadway, where Tony Blair did a runner. I mean, the people that really want to stand up and speak to their MPs, they should ask a very prime question is, with Tony Blair, he fronted a company with a load of Bush administrators called UI Energy. It was well written about in the media, where it was a South Korean company that had the rights for exploration in northern Iraq to search for oil. But nobody questioned in depth, because all the questions were answered by numpties in the government to hide the fact that shortly after the Gulf War's finished, these people crawled in there using exploration companies, which is one of the reasons why I say nobody does a dismantlement like myself and now David and Stevie and Lillian and Gareth and Andrew. They're all there to understand what I'm trying to teach them, is that when you spend that time, a whole new world opens up. And it's a dirty world. And it's a world where where if you have Sky or Virgin TV, you will see in between the programs, it's all about betting, bingo, borrowing and begging. I mean, little Seasway and his malaria drinking water, or Save the Snow Leopard, or £2 a month for this. And it's a joke. It's a blinking joke, because I don't care how many people run 25-kilometre marathons to raise money for cancer. Nobody looks at how much they're paying the CEOs of those companies and how many miles and how many coffee mornings you have to do to pay for their salaries. Because trust me, they're not doing it for anything. I mean, Tony Blair charged $300,000 for an hour's speech to a charity. It's a joke. But nobody looks. Nobody looks. They're all busy struggling to get £7 an hour.
Well, that's one of the things we constantly bring up, the fact that these charities, and particularly the big charities, are huge fundraising scams for those who are far better off than those who are donating. And even
that's one of the easiest places to launder money, because you've got good, honest people giving clean money in. So it's easy to siphon everything off.
Because nobody checks. Nobody checks. Well, I do.
Correct. That's correct.
I do, and that's why I say is that I've been threatened with court by Memory Crystal, and even Andrea Davison took me to court, but then she had to do a runner before a criminal trial. I named a whole system, the whole network, and the Derby Police and the Serious Fraud Office. They should be hauled across a table and given a good spanking, because what they've done is they've left the people vulnerable to the rest of the cohorts who were working with her and the senior people who she worked for, and I include the Labour Party, because she was working closely with a guy called Kevin James Cahill, who was her only witness in her in absence trial, and he was the intelligence advisor for Lord Paddy Ashdown and Gordon Brown. So if there's anything to do with a political scandal, that's the way you could do it. You know, I can name hundreds of companies, thousands, which are stealing, asset stripping billions, hundreds of billions. There's no need for people to be poor. There's no need for the NHS to be falling on its backside. There's no need, because these people have been getting away with it for centuries, in my book, just by following the money. If you were to look at St. James's Place in London, it's a den of iniquity that's owned and controlled by the Rothschilds, but nobody checks the companies that are moving in and out of those St. James's Square addresses that have been asset stripped to the tune of billions. Billions. So where are our lawyers? Where's the accountants, auditors? Where's the Serious Fraud Office? They'll pick on somebody selling dodgy horse meat across in France, but they're not looking at preventing billion-pound organised crime. Why? Because there's members of the House of Lords that are in it. That's why.
They've got far too many gatekeepers, haven't they, Gordon, in good positions to keep all this under wraps.
Look, I name them. I name them. If Amber Augusta Rudd wants to take me to court, let her stand next to me as the person that I accuse and answer the questions on which companies, like Monticello PLC and the fake diamond and zinc companies to which she represented out on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Now, that's a woman that's the Home Secretary. Please, you want to make me vomit? Yeah, it's a joke.
Absolutely good. Something I must mention is that you've got a quite a growing team of helpers, and we did when we started this call, we originally had quite a few of them on the call. Now, I don't know at what point you want to bring any of those team members in to make their particular points or to discuss with them what their role is in the organisation, but feel free to say to me, can we bring in whoever at whatever time, and I'll bring them in as quick as I can, Gordon.
Well, I mean, there's Stevie who's been through, and Lillian. I don't know if he's still on the line there, Stevie Ritchie.
Gordon, do you want me to drop out now and let others can come in?
Of course I can, but if you, I mean, there's Andrew Rowe, who is an actuary for Old Mutual. He has a full understanding of my research work because he's interviewed me. So he knows that I'm 100% correct. The point is that when you stand up to give a PowerPoint presentation, you need people with that individual skill to oversee my accusations and to say it's corroborated. That's what you need. So if you want to bring in any of the others, feel free.
There you go, Gordon. We've just brought Stevie in. So, Stevie, welcome to Raconteurs News. I believe we spoke to you briefly once before you got cut off, but welcome back. And Gordon, you and Stevie, the floor's yours.
Hi, Gordon.
Hi, Stevie. I'm sure you can reiterate to Andy that it was through our meeting, understanding where you follow the money, which linked back then to 44 Upper Belgrave Road, Clifton, Bristol, is to understand that when you steal lots of money, you've got to be able to conduit it. And that's what they do. I've identified every single boiler room that operates for these thieving gits in the United Kingdom. I know them all. And all it is looking at the same repetitive patterns which move in and out of those same addresses. That when you check some of them, they're nothing more than terraced rows houses, which are, more or less derelict buildings. Off you go, Stevie. Give him a shout.
Yeah, that's correct. Most these offices, buildings, there's been no activity there. You look through the letterbox, piles of mail, and nothing goes on there, but yet they're registered as legit companies from these addresses.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at Andrea Davison's address, it was a mid-terraced house. And from there were about 40 companies where she altered the census records to say that those directors of those companies to which she was the secretary were living in that building. Well, they must have been stacked 10 deep in each room. But, that's what she got prosecuted for. But it's the political interlocks to those individuals who I have accused openly that haven't got the courage to stand up in a court of law and prove me wrong. If I'm wrong, I will get on my hands and knees and I'll walk myself into prison. But trust me, I'm not wrong. And so I would I would believe, given the latest news from America, that those people that I've put against the wall, including the Financial Conduct Authority and the Serious Fraud Office, will be forced to act. This is not Hillsborough. This is not a cover-up by senior police officers. This is not going to go away. My records will stay there forever because they'll be on the biggest access site in the world, which is the internet.
Yeah, Gordon.
Gordon, do you want to mention any of the individuals on the Financial Conduct Authority?
Pardon?
Do you want to leave that one? Do you want to mention any of talk about any of the individuals that are or have been on the board of the Financial Conduct Authority?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at Anthony John Craven, sir, he was a director of the Financial Conduct Authority, and he's a co-director in the same companies that I've accused of being Ponzi scams. So you can't get any better, because that's what happened in South Africa when Pardon?
Musical chairs. When you weren't on, I was describing how the directors move around from different companies.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that in 2003, 2004, the very people, the senior anti-corruption police who were supposed to be acting on behalf of victims, including my partner, Val, when I checked doing my own research, I used an ex-Special Forces security expert and South Africa's top private investigator to recover documents which clearly outlined the involvement of their intelligence services who operate with companies in the UK. So if there's ever a threat to national security, it's me be able to identify the individuals who are closely working with the ANC government, who were intelligence officers trained by the Russians. Yeah, look, my story goes back a long time, and I believe that I stand quite firm against those individuals, including members of the House of Lords, who shouldn't be drawing a salary to go and have a 5-minute visit and then draw 130 quid and then go to the bar and get bladdered. Those people should be in a 6x4, same as anybody else that gets done for shoplifting. These people are the scum of the earth. I don't bow to anybody.
They're not that good, Gordon. They're not that good.
Pardon?
I'm saying that you said scum of the earth. I said they're not that good, mate. These people are they're a breed apart.
Yeah, look, their privileges have been handed down for centuries to, honorary titles. I know that. I've got nothing against anybody that's been handed a title. What I've got something against is those people that extract the urine out of good people like you and I and all the other people who struggle day by day to just exist. That's what I stand for, and I will always stand for it.
Excellent. Gordon, we've got quite a few comments coming in, so if I can just read a few out. We've got...
Of course.
Joanne Solis, she was asking David to comment about something to do with council. Joanne, can you repost that, please? But she says, I can't believe that Gordon forgot about me, the femme fatale of the team. So
who's Joanne Solis? I never heard of her.
Bring her in. I'll drop out if you want.
Yeah.
No, she's a stalwart. If I sneeze, she'll post it.
Okay, well, Dave, if you can drop off, we'll drag Joanne in, and we'll hear from Joanne.
It's the Duncan Partnership, Gordon. That one, remember?
Yeah.
The one. Explain that to them about where the taxes go, mate, will you?
Well,
right, I'm going to drop off.
Drop off.
Yeah.
There you go. Dave's gone, and we're just calling Joanne in now. So
hello.
Hi, Joanne.
Joe, have we met before, Joe?
I think so, just a few times.
Yeah,
Hi, Joe. Hi.
Hi. You doing all right?
I'm very well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this, so please carry on.
Please carry on. Wow. Gordon gave a link to a company, Duncan Partnership, which was something I mentioned in the comments earlier, which is quite easy for people to look into, and it shows a lot of the councils actually are invested in Duncan Partnership. Is that correct, Gordon?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, the Duncan Partnership, which actually will show quite easily for the everyday person like ourselves that want to have a look where the money is going, how they're filtering the money out. Not only through the councils, through the MPs and so forth, but it all leads back to these common addresses, as both David and Gordon mentioned earlier, which is quite a big giveaway.
Yeah, well, as I said, Duncan Partnerships is one, but if anybody wants to look at how big this is on an industrial scale, all you have to look at is this address. It's 5 Jupiter House, Culliver Park, Aldermaston, Reading. And when you look at that, you will see it operates at a front for at UK PLC client secretaries, client directors, all under the at, as in with the categorization on your keyboard there for at UK PLC. Now, when you look at that, you will see that there are thousands of dissolved companies with all at but then listing at Swansea, at Edinburgh, at. So I make this accusation that if any person was to look at that as a qualified auditor and accountant, alarm bells would go off and there would be 20 vans with armoured police tooled up smashing the doors down because it's the biggest joke around. And that's not the only one. If you went to 39A Leicester Road, Manchester, and had a look at everything that comes out of Form 10 Directors FD, and all those interlock companies, they are the onward movement of companies out of 788, 790 Finchley Road, which then get moved to other addresses like Quadrant House, floor 6, 4 Thomas More Square. As I said, once you understand the mechanics and the mechanisms that they use, it's easy to lay out a blueprint of how you can move money, bounce it, and then fragment it so it falls out of the sight of many people because they will have numbered accounts in Bermuda, Panama, Cyprus, Limassol, Cyprus, Vancouver, Canada, Johannesburg. This is how they move the money. Now, anybody which wants to question me in a court of law is welcome to do that as long as they can explain to me that this is legitimate. Well, it's not. It's money laundering on an industrial scale. Well, and that's where I believe councils...
One of the questions that's come up on Facebook again, Gordon, is somebody's asking, I think from a point of incredulity almost, Gordon, can money actually be laundered from non-governmental organisations?
Of course it can.
Yeah.
Of course it can. I mean, if you looked at the biggest disgrace to me is the 5 companies that I exposed in the Falklands. Oil exploration companies. They include Desire Petroleum, Falkland Oil and Gas, Argos Exploration, Rockhopper Resources. These companies, Border and Southern, these companies have cash burned £1.5 billion and they have found nothing. Nothing. Now, do you know the victims of or investors of Desire Petroleum were actually Falklands veterans from the Falklands War? Now, I would think any MP or the new political party, which is called the Democrat and Veterans Party, would be all over this information like a bad rash. And yet I've contacted the Democratic and Veterans Party offering to give them the forensic evidence to bring about the dismantlement of these Ponzi scams and to bring in the Serious Fraud Office. I'm not talking about, as I said, people that get placed before the Jeremy Kyle show for nicking a few quid. These people are stealing billions. And yet, because there's members of government, like the directors of Desire Petroleum, included a guy called Dr. Colin Barry Phipps, who was a Labour MP, and the Phipps family, who were all involved in this, drawing magnificent salaries for finding nothing. Explain it. If somebody can explain it to me, then I'll stick my hands up in the air. But they can't, because when you look at the paperwork and the companies and their directors' histories, they've run hundreds of companies in an identical manner. And that's where the disgrace is to the protective services of this country, is that it's a joke. It's a bloody joke. They need people like us to do the due diligence, to question the directors. Everybody is accountable under a duty of care. That's what I'm doing. It's my duty of care. Anybody wants to try and have a pop at me, I've got correspondence from anti-money laundering experts in the French and Swiss divisions who have thanked me greatly for winning 4 cases for them in the French courts. That's not hearsay. I've got the correspondence. Anybody want to stick those correspondence to a judge? Trust me, there's many members of the House of Lords are going to do a little bit of a wee-wee. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic, Gordon.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of the first hour here, so thanks for joining us, all of you. We haven't had everybody from the team on the mic yet, but what we're going to do now is take a brief music break so we can all have a comfort break, grab a cup of tea, have a pee, whatever you want, and we'll be back in 8 minutes. So if you guys can hang on, I'll bring in the other members of the team and you can sort out what you're going to do for the rest of the final hour. So here's some music from a favourite of mine. I'm looking forward to seeing this guy again at Spirit of the Marsh. Anyone who fancies a weekend away over Beltane, great music, great company, quite a few pagans there, some interesting arts and crafts. Join us. We'll be at Spirit of the Marsh. It's in Thedlethorpe near Mablethorpe, and it's the 4th and 5th and 6th, or 3rd, 4th and 5th of May this year. And you can find out more details about that and get yourself a ticket at spiritofthemarsh.com. So enjoy the music, folks. We'll be back in about to Raconteurs News. Tuesday evening, we've got a fairly eventful first hour under our belts. I'd like to welcome back Gordon Bowden and a few more members of the
I'm off to the hole in the road. I'm walking off school and I'm off to the city.
Welcome back, Gordon, and
Looking pretty, see, I got this job downtown. Selling up top ladies, watches for £1.
Yeah, nice to be back. Thanks.
For a really dodgy man that I met in a dodgy cafe.
Well, it's Gareth is on the line. He's on the railway line, actually. Yeah, give it a go, Gareth. You still there?
Right. Yes, I'm still here. Basically, where I'm coming from is I've only been following Gordon's work for about a year or so now, but it's astounding. Where I'm coming from, as a Welshman, when I first found out what was going on, not just with the financial corruption side of things from Anglesey mining, I found it links into other things which is far deeper and far bigger than anybody can even fathom. So that's where I'm coming from. But when you follow it through, you've literally got to, just like you've got to follow the money. And that's the principle what I like to follow it through. Just like it was in the Watergate and all the president's men. You've got to literally follow it through. Just like the guy was saying to Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, the two journalists who followed the investigation through right from the beginning on the Watergate hotel, right to the very top where President Nixon had to resign. So that, to me, is the same principle today as it was then. You literally got to follow it through, and that's just what Gordon has been doing for 16, 17 years now. And this is basically why it's so fascinating, because every day you're learning something new.
Well, can I just cut in there, Gareth? If you looked at the Nixon expose, which you said all the president's men, if you had a look at Oliver North, who took the Fifth Amendment, you're looking at Operation Zapata, which involved the arming of Contra rebels. And the people involved with that were the CIA, through what they called Operation Zapata, which included George Bush and Jeb Bush. Now, my research into Zapata included Zapata oil and gas. And when I recovered the full history on the Ocean Guardian, which was the semi-submersible oil rig used in the Falklands for the 5 companies that were, well, they weren't even there. It's a joke, because then that links into George W. Bush and a company called Barrick Gold Corporation. And Barrick Gold Corporation was a CIA money laundering front for covert black ops. And the other director was none other than WMD arms trader Mohammed Aden Khashoggi, and another guy who I have been exposing for plus minus 10, 15 years is Stephen Rowland Dattels. And Stephen Rowland Dattels was a co-director with the very man who I got threatened by Memory Crystal, who was Sir Samuel S. and Jonah, in the $2.5 billion cash write-down by Areva Nuclear Fuels, who bought from Euramin Inc., where Stephen Rowland Dattels and Sir Samuel S. and Jonah and a crowd of others that I've fully exposed, bought a plot of dirt in Namibia, which they purchased for $100,000 and then sold it to Areva Nuclear for $2.5 billion. So the people that did the investigation into that, when you say follow the money, the politicians involved include senior French politicians who worked with Sarkozy and then were working in the office of Right Honourable PM Tony Blair. So that's the way I can follow the money, as you say, to the very leaders who you have to doff your hat to. I don't doff my hat to anybody anymore. not when I found out what they're doing. So, Gareth, can you give another explanation into where you say follow the money when you look at how Anglesey, which is very close to my heart as well, because I worked at RAF Brawdy for my last service, and I flew to Anglesey to RAF Valley on a few occasions in a Sea King.
Sure. I can follow that on. Yeah, I mean, actually, you could probably tell from my accent, possibly. I am actually Welsh. I am from Caernarfon, from North Wales.
Beautiful place, Caernarfon. I love it.
Caernarfon. Some people might call it Caernarfon, but it's actually Caernarfon.
It's Caernarfon where I come from.
So, yeah, I'm also a Welsh speaker as well, and I know this thing that's going on at Anglesey Mining is very close to my heart, because not only are we talking about the money angle, we are also talking potentially what is down that Paris Mountain shaft, and that, if we look at the Private Eye articles that were in 1990, where they are explaining how it's linked to nuclear waste. Now we're talking something far, far bigger than just the financial scandal, because people need to be aware of what is really involved here. We are not just talking money. We are talking about thousands of years worth of nuclear waste that potentially could be down that shaft, which, if you want to carry on with that, Gordon, as to explaining how it's linked to cementation mining and Charles Vynydd, would you be kind enough to do that for us?
Yeah, sure. Because I work for Goldfields as a mining engineer, HVAC and refrigeration, and hoists, which was a 120-person man winder, 36-person service winder, and 18-ton rock skips, and mine flood control. I've got a good overview of all the technical trades working for a profitable mine on the deepest hard rock gold mining in the world. So when I looked at following certain directors who were, one gentleman was called Malcolm Alec Byrne, Burne, and when I traced him from a company called Pan-African Resources, which came out of the same address, a Rothschild's address, which is 6 St. James's Place, St. James's Square, London, where a company called Johannesburg Consolidated Investments lost over $1.5 billion. It was asset stripped. Now, when I checked all the companies that came out of that address, one company was called Metarex Limited, and Metarex Limited, its subsidiaries was Copper Resources Corporation and Pan-African Resources, which brought in Malcolm Alec Byrne, which led me to Anglesey Mining. However, I did an overview of the technical design of the Paris Mountain mine, and it only had a 300-meter vertical shaft with purported 1,000 meters of offshoot gallery. Now, in terms of standard mining operations, you need one downdraft shaft, and then your workings, albeit in a 1,000-meter gallery. Then you have to have a updraft shaft where you stick the ventilation fans. Now, there's never been a second shaft for exploiting the removal of personnel should there be a shaft damage. So it had no secondary means of escape and no means of sticking ventilation fans in. So the actual design of that falls into the same category as a Sellafield nuclear waste repository, because that's what you need. You don't need a ventilation shaft. You just need offshoot galleries where you put sealed flasks of various grades of radioactive waste. But when you looked at the Private Eye magazine, 2 articles that on the one hand, the directors then in 1990-91 were saying that the rocks were fractured and fissured, which meant that they were susceptible to input of seawater because it's way below the sea level, being 300 meters deep on a slightly sloping gradient, which makes it actually ideal as a nuclear waste repository, as in picked up by the nuclear establishment. But I've confronted Bill Hooley and others at Anglesey to ask them to give me an opportunity to do a shaft exam. And then there's been a negative response to that because I believe I'm 100% right, and so are the articles. It's a nuclear waste repository, and that waste would be highly dangerous to human life for in excess of 250,000 years. So forget stealing money, as Gareth said. These people should be facing a total investigation, not just by the Welsh Authority, but by the Serious Fraud Office and any NGO group.
Oh wow! I've got a message for you.
Can I just add that Bill Hooley doesn't actually know when the company was formed. He's been on record saying that the company was formed in 1988. It was actually September 1984. Yeah. So
that's correct.
He has no idea what he's talking about, and neither was he a CEO when the shaft was sunk anyway.
Yeah, but I've confronted Bill Hooley on numerous occasions. He doesn't even know the companies that he was registered as a director to, which linked to a guy called Mr. Counsell, Counsell, and that's the link to Pandora's box, blowing them all to pieces. So as I said, when people lie to me, if they want to lie, it's fine, but I'll catch them because my mining experience gives me an opportunity to confront based upon my technical knowledge. And that's what I said. I'm not just talking about mining companies. I'm talking about these fracking companies, which big hoo-ha has been made about fracking in the UK. Well, if you want to check my historical accusations about a company called UK Oil and Gas, whose directors included David Anthony Lenigas from the Lonro days of Ponzi scams, and over 138 other Ponzi scams that he's run, then this is the biggest Ponzi scam currently being run by these con artists. Never mind Ned Kelly, he got away with wearing an iron mask. These people live in Monaco. We're sailing around the world on big yachts. That's what I said. Anybody wants to confront me stage by stage, we can do this. Raconteurs News has given us a platform, and I welcome anybody to join us. We are going down to London on the 21st of April. There's a big conferencing centre at the Queen Elizabeth II conferencing hall, where a lot of these Ponzi scam companies will be presenting, hoping to entrap a load of innocent investors. Well, I'll be there with a team of Pandora's Box, with Gareth and others, Joe and Stevie and Peter. I will present evidence there that, as I said, not just make people do a bit of a wee-wee, they won't know where to run. One, because they can't run. Corporate documents, which are listing on company's house, can't disappear. I've got them all. Trust me, I think the people can verify the extent of my library that I've got here.
Amazing, Gordon. I've actually got a message for you coming from our chat room. There's somebody who's signed in there as Kipper Walker. And, and they're saying, can you tell Gordon I've just messaged Gavin Felton as he gave me his email address to give to him. He said he's willing to meet too. And he said, yes, I'm a member of the D&V party, whatever that is.
That's the Democrats and Veterans Party. Now, I contacted them by telephone. And the reason I contacted them is because of their memorandum of association as to what they represent on behalf of veterans who understand how self-serving politicians are protecting these very companies to which I want to expose. And the reason I said that is, one, my service record speaks for itself, 12 years with commendation, is that I believe I am 100% correct, and it's been backed up forensically by anti-money laundering experts. Anybody that destroys the financial life of an ex-serviceman who served in the Falklands needs to be hung, drawn and quartered. And these people have got away with it. They stole over 1.5 billion. That's one of these aircraft carriers. It's a joke.
Can I jump in there for a second?
Yeah.
One of the other things I find really fascinating is we're not just talking about the money here, obviously. We are talking about, you mentioned earlier, Paul, about the charities. Well, I work very closely with a charity, and not every charity is bad. There are some charities that are good. And I went to Greece last year working with a charity. And one of the things I was interested in finding out was, what is the effect of war and how it interrelates then to the refugees that are linked to this, right? So you got people from Greece, people from Syria, Afghanistan, Turkey. They're all going on these inflatable boats across to Greece, and then they're stuck in the refugee camps, which is, this is the after effect of all the money laundering that's going on. And so we're not just talking about the money. We're not just talking about the link to Anglesey mining. We are talking a global thing, international thing, where it links to all sorts of other things that affect a lot of people. So that's why it's so important to expose this, because there is a far-reaching thing. It's not just in Britain. It's across the world, and that's why what Gordon has found out is not just linked to Britain. It links to Panama, it links to Canada, it links to Cyprus, it links to Australia, it links to South Africa, where it all started with Val and Gordon. So it then links back into London, which is London is the capital of the money laundering. So London is the hub of it all, yes, but it links to all other things that we can't control, but we've got to kind of stop it one way or another.
Yeah, look, I believe, based upon the documents that I've read about the Democrat and Veterans Party, that given that their two main speakers and promoters one is an ex-SAS gentleman who took part in the Iran embassy siege, and the other one is a military crossholder. I got every respect for these brave people, every respect. However, I come from it from a different angle, using my expertise to help them understand where they need to stand up in a court or in a public forum and understand where people like the Home Secretary, Amber Augusta Rudd, if you were to look at the history of her companies, she has no right whatsoever to be appointed as a Home Secretary. None at all. And neither was to give a title to Peter Hain, Lord Peter Hain. That guy was a director of Amara Mining, which was a Clough mining cash-gutted shell. And he has the right to go to Africa to talk about miners being shot in the back by the South African police. He knows nothing. And I'll stand in front of anybody and tell him the truth that needs to be told. The Democrat and Veterans Party would be an ideal platform to interview Pandora's Box team and read some correspondence I have from French anti-money laundering experts, which when they read it, they'll see that I'm a genuine person. I'm not here to get a medal. I'm not here for that. I'm not here to get any sort of thanks from anybody. I want to stop this for you, your children, and your children's children, because that's what needs to be done.
Exactly. And the other point as well is all this thing, the money laundering, they're pilfering the pension funds, they're destroying the NHS, all this austerity that's going on doesn't need to be, because what they're doing is they're taking the money from the likes of you and me and destroying the country in the meantime. But and then they're running away with the money offshore. And that's basically what hurts me, because this country is going to be so much better.
Well, it will be if we get the right following. We don't, with the austerity march. I think there was 250,000 people went on that march. Can you tell me what it achieved? Shall I tell you? Nothing. Things are still the same. It achieved nothing. If you want to dismantle something, all you need to do is, as an engineer, is to take out key parts. And my objectives are to start dismantling this lot, starting with one company, Anglesey Mining. It will lead all the way to a multitude of fake oil, gas and mining companies. And that's the way you do it. You have to start at the very bottom, cut the legs off. The head won't be able to move because you've cut the legs off.
That's brilliant, Gordon, because something I was actually just about to bring up was something a friend said to me the other day, which really, really touched a nerve with me. Is a friend who's been a very active and effective campaigner for many, many years, and they've actually stepped back, and they were talking through the reasons why they've stepped back. And they said something you need to be asking your guests, and I was about to ask it, and I think you've just answered it, is we all know the truth. All know the truth is perhaps a little bit of an exaggeration, because we tend to find that when we're speaking, the people who are listening already know a lot of what we're talking about.
Oh, they will.
That we've enlightened some more tonight. But what this person said to me was, we know the truth. How the hell do we shift it from truth to justice? We've got enough truth. We need some justice mixed in with that now. And I'm glad to see that you're moving towards that. And I just want to read out a comment from John Hull again. He's saying something which I'd missed. I wasn't online much yesterday. He's saying that Kirby Misperton fracking site is closing down, as reported by Ian R. Crane yesterday. £70 million spent and nothing to show. So I'd like to applaud that as a victory for all those folks who were out there in all weathers. They took personal risks with a personal
Can I just add to that? Can I just add to that, Andy? If you follow, Ian Rowland Crane came to my house with his American girlfriend or whatever partner to ask me for advice on the company that was taking him to court. I actually went down to the court when he was being before the courts for bankruptcy hearing by the company, and I stood and chatted to him and his followers. And yes, I believe that the followers have stood in terrible weather and camped out and fought for it, but nobody looked at the companies. Now, if you ask Ian Rowland Crane where his service career started in the States with a company called Schlumberger, Schlumberger was run for 21 years by a senior executive called Ronald Reno. Now, the emphasis on Ronald Reno is, I have been told, that he is the father of Elizabeth Noel Reno, who was the partner for Scott Gordon Young, who was found impaled off his executive apartment in London. And Scott Gordon Young was the separated husband of Michelle Danique Young, who I appeared on TV with on the BBC programme, Ex-Millionaires Wives Club. That was on TV. I had two little snippets of me walking into a QC's office with Michelle. And that's linked to Russian oligarch money laundering. So as I said, it doesn't matter which angle you want to come from. I can use my expertise and my library of downloaded research to be able to come at it from every angle that you can ever imagine. And I'm sure if Andrew Rowe is there, he can come in and he can verify what I've done over 16 years. It needs to be pulled apart company by company, which will then be a major scoop. This is not the Wolf of Wall Street. This is the wolves of Westminster. And trust me, I've got them all. Doesn't matter which one you want, I've got them all.
Brilliant. Are you there, Andrew?
Yes. I'll just come in on that. So yes, Gordon mentioned about Michelle Young and her late husband who passed away. Now he signed over a power of attorney to a gentleman called Stephen David Jones, and if you check his record, he was out of an operation called Jar House Capital. And Jar House Capital was out of an address 41 Charlton Street, which is sort of just north of King's Cross. It's one of the streets that goes off Pentonville Road there. And if you check that and dismantle that whole operation, you will see that historically is linked into the wider network of 788, 790 Finchley Road.
And Anita Zabladowicz and Poju Chaim Zabladowicz. And when you understand that he is an Israeli arms trader, that you will see the influence. As I said, I'm not anti-Semitic. I just don't like people that steal money, lots of money, billions. Is that you will see the influence that's been placed upon the British government in protecting these people, because they're the people that have been bunging money to various political parties. And that's how they're protected.
Yeah. Gordon mentioned Amara Mining with Peter Hain, which I think he was on the board of directors for about 18 months only at that company. And if you check the accounts from his 18 months as a board of director of that company, you'll see that was when a huge amount of asset stripping went on there. Another gentleman that I would personally like to name is the Member of Parliament for Norfolk Northwest, who is Sir Henry Bellingham. He is a director on a company called Pathfinder Minerals, which is a fake oil gas, which is a fake mining company. It's mentioned in the Register of Members' Interest, but he's been taking a salary of £4,000 per month for all the time that he's been on there. And that's also linked to a fellow director, Nicholas True, who is also linked straight back to 788, 790 Finchley Road. So you can follow all these spokes in the wheel of how the whole fraud, theft and money laundering operates. And for his services, Sir Henry Bellingham, he was knighted in the New Year's Honours. I think from memory, it was 2016, or it might have been 2017. I think it was 2016. So that really doesn't say a lot about the committee which decides on these honours, because they could have, if they'd been doing their job correctly, then they would have been investigating what Gordon has been so assiduously investigating for many years now, and they would have seen that. And then you think, well, how the hell is this man being given knighthood when he's part of this fraud against you, me, and everybody else in the country, ultimately?
Well, if I can just jump in there, Andrew, it seems to me like the honours system is a reward system for those criminal aspects within the system. I mean,
you're quite right.
Are you telling me?
And I could also,
the people who did the vetting didn't know about
the interesting thing. Sorry, can I just jump in? In the news today, it was about Sir Bradley Wiggins. And apparently he's been caught out doing a bit of tax evasion as well. So not only are we talking about the potential doping scandal, but also that he's been hiding money away. Now, from what I gather, is that David Beckham was also about to be knighted, but somebody found out that he was also shifting money about to offshore
Yeah,
countries.
that was Ingenious Film Partners to LLP and Ingenious. I was naming these back in 2006. The very names that I put out were the same names in Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers, which only came out just recently. I was naming them all in 2006. Now, if you follow the money to Mossack Fonseca, which is the company that's said to be linked in Panama, well, people just need to pick up a pen or a right-fingered click on their mouse and look at Mossack Fonseca UK Limited, which comes out of the very same offices as RM Nominees, RM Group, which is Raymond Morris, which is a tobacco group. So Mossack Fonseca is only a spin-off from Raymond Morris. And then you start to bring in the old tobacco firms, which made their money and moved it then into Formula One. So then you bring in Bernie Eccleston and the rest of the cronies. I mean, how can you get a guy that dresses up in a Nazi uniform with a load of prostitutes controlling how he gets off criminal charges by bunging money away? It's a joke. Controlling how he gets
Probably because the people that could actually prosecute him was at the party with him.
Well, I wasn't there. With the earlier mention of Beaufort Securities and linked to multiple companies linked to asset stripping and corporate share fraud in the States, what I did was I looked at all the other affiliates that have been charged in America for fraud and money laundering. And there was a certain gentleman called John Hayden Davies and Sajeen Verma and Tahir Akbar. They were the main links that I followed from those Beaufort Asset Clearing Services Limited, which is the second company. And then what I found out is you wonder why, because under New Options Housing is a certain Lord David Maximilian Cathmoyer Nicol. So you're quite right, reward for asset stripping. It's brilliant, isn't it? But Lord David...
You might want to also mention Jeffrey Hoodless and Hoodless and their connections with Beaufort Securities.
Well, Beaufort Securities never used to be called Beaufort Securities. It used to be called Hoodless Brennan and HB Brennan. And it did the name change because it was under scrutiny from the Financial Conduct Authority. Hence, they changed their name 3 times to become Beaufort Securities. But I found out that Beaufort Securities operated 2 identical names. Beaufort Securities only picked up the defunct company's name later on. And this is how they can get away with it. But under New Options Housing and Lord David Maximilian Cathmoyer Nicol, he operated as a director of the Profit Recovery Company Limited. And that came out of HCS Secretarial Limited and Hanover Directors, which is 44 Upper Belgrave Road, Clifton, Bristol. Now, why the importance to that? Well, the big hoo-ha at the moment is the Grenfell Tower fire. And if you look, the cladding company, one company under the same directors came out of 44 Upper Belgrave Road, Clifton, Bristol, and the other company came out of 788 790 Finchley Road. And you wonder why Chris Williamson, Derby North MP, resigned from the front bench as a fire minister. And that's after I confronted him with these documents.
Yeah, that was Harley Curtain Wall.
That's correct, yeah. And Harley Facades.
And Harley
and that is also why you and I, Gordon, went to see my MP as well.
That's correct. We mentioned that. And they're all running because... One, if there was anything wrong with the information, they would call the police or say that I'm harassing them. I'm not harassing them. I want this to come out in the courts, and those people that have covered it up as politicians be held accountable under their duty of care for failing to bring this to the attention of Parliament, which is why I'm doing this right now.
Thank you, Gordon. You're doing some amazing work there, and all members of your team. But I'd just like to read out a few comments now, because they are backing up. We've got a comment from Craig Richardson in Facebook, and he said Maggie Thatcher's government did a sweet deal with Budge Mining of Sheffield and sold most collieries for just £1, but that was all mining rights. And we've got an interesting question here, which I would love to hear your answer on it, Gordon, from Kitty. And Kitty's saying, "Hi, Gordon. Do the people involved that you've mentioned know that you're investigating them? For example, Tony Blair and his cronies." And she says, "In addition to my question, do these celebrities who pay into these production companies, are they aware they are in a tax scam, as they seem to protest innocence when it's reported in the press?"
Look, we, as you understand, we've all got a duty of care. Everybody. That's under the human rights of people. We all have this it's a duty of care. Now, when people think that they can get away with non-payment of tax by being a celebrity, they then go to their auditors and accountants, who are there to protect their clients. And they set about setting up structures to be able to move their money where their clients pay less and less or nothing. However, with Victoria and David Beckham, what I found out was that under Ingenious Film Partners 2 LLP and LLP, is that there were about 80 different film companies that are interlocked to that Ingenious network. And it's only when you understand the enormity of those particular individuals, like Sir Alex Ferguson, who are all identified as individual directors, is that when you see how they can launder money in billions to offshore single-numbered accounts and then draw it under a different pseudonym. And this is what I'm saying, is that the Financial Conduct Authority, or the FSA as it used to be called, operating on individual cases. They're not looking at it as a collective, as in the mining companies. They're not seeing what I can see. And the material that I use to identify their modus operandi is what you call an AIM admission to trade document, which has to be filed by a company to Companies House. And that gives them, when they launch their oil, gas and mining company, they have to list a full directive and risk analysis, geological resource, JORC resources. And in more or less towards the end of the document is directors' other interests. And when you see the extent of the cash-gutted companies, oil, gas and mining companies, that have never mined anything, they've never found a thimbleful of oil, it's a joke. But nobody's ever put it together that these individual directors are directors of up to 150 companies, because it's all interlocked. And as I said, I can't say in one evening session on your show how I can nail every single company, and I can. But I haven't got 16 years on your show. I won't be around in 16 years. So I'm relying on the people that I'm introducing all this stuff to, is to carry this work on, because it's their duty of care. We all have it. I want this to be a better world for my children and yours. And the only way to do it is to pull them apart professionally and technically, to show that those people who are living in doorways under cardboard, there's no need for that. None.
No,
absolutely not. Quite agree.
Makes me ashamed of my own country. Trust me.
Paul, you wanted to come in and say something there, man?
Yeah, I was just saying, I totally agree. It's about, I was saying on the show last night, that it's time that people they've got to grow up and take responsibility for each and every man and woman. People, as you just said, Gordon, how 16 years to try and put all this stuff together. And what do people do? Well, where's your proof? Show me. You've not gone one in court. That's all I ever got. People have got to take responsibility themselves and start to look at this information and take it forward.
I've got it. Anybody, if you ask Andrew or Gareth or Stevie or Lillian, if you ask them to explain what I've got in my library, I can rip them to pieces, company by company, not just with hearsay, not just with conspiracy, but with fact. And that's the way I've tried to work my life with, as an engineer, is to understand, whether it be in the RAF or a mining engineer, is to understand that documents are very boring. Paperwork is very boring. But if it's listed in Companies House, it's a forensic document. That's why I use it.
Brilliant.
So, I mean, look.
Thanks, Gordon.
Andy, well, as I said, Gareth and Andrew have financial acumen in their jobs. I don't know if they mentioned their biographies of work employment, but Gareth works for Sainsbury's, if I can just do a plug for the company. You can give me some vouchers.
Are you on commission here, Gordon? Are you on commission?
I want some vouchers, and because I don't earn a lot. So, and Andrew is an actuary for Old Mutual. So they also have the life skills to be able to corroborate what I've been saying and what I've been researching for 16 years. And as I said, I've got correspondence from people who have written reports for the Toronto Stock Exchange in anti-money laundering. And anybody want to query that? Because I'll be taking them down on the 21st to London to wave in front of a few people that will make them do a wee-wee. And that's what I'm trying to do, is that this is about how they've got away with it for, in my books, at least 40 years, by either bribery and corruption of politicians, by funding their political parties in the hope that the authorities would turn a blind eye, as they did for David Mackenzie Donald Mills. You know, Jowlegate, Tessa Jowl, her husband, he was working with Silvero Berlusconi and the mafia, setting up over 100 companies out of 788, 790 Finchley Road. So, as I said, the reason he got off it, and there was no inquiry this side, is because Barbara Mills was appointed the head of the Serious Fraud Office. So, as I said,
you really couldn't make it all up. And another example is Abraxa Limited, which was out of 50 Lothian Road, Edinburgh, which is another of these interconnected addresses. And if you looked at that company, then Michael Rifkind was director at the same time as Sir John Anthony Chilcott. So there you
the Chilcott inquiry.
The person who did the Chilcott report, and at the same time, the Joint Intelligence and Security Committee chairman overseeing that report was Michael Rifkind, who was a co-director of Abraxa Limited. And anybody can look that up on Company Check documents. Surprise, surprise, if you look at Companies House actual website, then you'll see that the records to Abraxa have conveniently been deleted, along with a lot of other incriminating evidence. So one of the things that
you say they've been deleted? No, they haven't. I got them.
Not deleted, but one of the things, Gordon, that you do regularly is take screenshots of everything, just so that yes, you can get back at it through something called the Wayback Machine. But you need to always take a screenshot of absolutely everything. Hence Gordon's enormous library, so that if they do try to delete those records, then you've got a hard copy of proving the allegation.
Well, go on.
No, I've finished, Gordon.
Okay. I hear somebody in the background. Do you want me to put a kibosh on a lot of people's conspiracy on Princess Diana?
Oh.
Would you like that,
Go
Andy?
for it, Gordon.
Well, when I started my Air Force career, I was also stationed in the last part down in Pembrokeshire, and that's when Charles and Diana got married and they visited St. David's. And because I was on the earlies doing the airfield arresting barriers and the rotary hydraulic arresting gear, I knocked off early and then met the convoy at Fort Gale Beach and took some photographs and from a car park. And as the entourage of cars passed me, I dropped my camera and saluted. And Diana leaned across Charles and blew me a kiss. Yeah, so very personal. But if you see photographs, and you can put it on the internet, where Diana was working for a company called the Hallow Trust as a sponsor for anti-mining in the DRC and Angola in the minefields. And she wore a tabard with the Hallow Trust on. Well, she didn't know, but I know through my research that the Hallow Trust incorporated a director called Brigadier Aldwyn James Glendining Wright, and he was an SAS commander, 22 Squadron, and he also operated in a company called Arlington Associates Limited, and they had their other directors were Jeffrey Trevor White, and the other SAS commander was Mark Blagborough. And Mark Blagborough and Brigadier Aldwyn James Glendining Wright changed their names to operate different companies. But under Arlington Associates Limited, they also operated with Ambassador Francis D. Cook, who was the senior executive for an American arms company that did personnel mines. Now, I'm sure if Dodie told Diana that the very person that she was sponsoring for the Hallow Trust had a director linked to Ambassador Francis D. Cook, who was making landmines and depleted uranium weapons, then she would have been slightly miffed that she was helping to raise hundreds of millions for this anti-mining company, which actually turned out to be producing the very things that she was helping to abolish, if you see my drift. Now, the mere fact that Arlington Associates Limited had their office next to the London Ritz at 22 Arlington Street, and out of that address were miles and piles of fake oil, gas and mining companies. And out of that same address was a company which had a senior executive called Tony Blair, out of the same office. Now, as I said, you can't make it up. But, I mean, as I said, Diana was somebody that's been very close to my heart for a long, long time. But, as I said, people have looked at conspiracy theories. I just like to look at companies' records to see how these people managed to get away with it. And they are extracting the urine out of people. Absolutely. Follow the money.
And when you mentioned Tony Blair, I've just got to come in and say that is a face you never get tired of punching, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Gordon,
it also seems ironic, well, not ironic, I suppose, but when you look back at the likes of Thatcher, who was asked what did she deem her greatest achievements as Prime Minister, and she said New Labour, which was Tony Blair.
And just for your information, where did Margaret Thatcher take her safe seat from? Finchley.
Yes, East Finchley.
So, and her husband was in Borneo mining. So, Borneo
all the dots
oil.
start to join up.
Well, as I say, join the dots, follow the money. To me, you have to, rather than me trying to express everything in my library in one short attack, you can't do that because it goes over the heads of most people. If you look at the general police, as I said, meat and two veg cops, is that they're doing a brilliant job. However,
I might disagree with you on that one, Gordon.
Well, I said prevention is better than cure, isn't it? No matter which way you look at it. And all I want to do is, with Pandora's Box team, is to be able to bring in years of experience, and it's not hearsay, it's genuine experience as a researcher, to help somebody. I mean, if you've still got the contact there with the Democrat and Veterans Party, the DNV party, pass my details over. You can give them my phone number, 07949 388 908, which is on our cards. And you tell them, I'm willing to stand up and go through documents with them to help them to confront in every constituency where there's an MP. Places like Andrew Griffiths, the one that called Jeremy Corbyn, an old monarch, whatever you want to call him. But Andrew Griffiths, he threw me off. He said some derogatory remarks about me on his Facebook site until I pointed out that his company, his property company, when he was a director, came out of 790 Finchley Road. I'm going to do him for defamation, but I say I've got many years to file the claim. But as I said, that's not important to me. It's important that somebody who needs a political platform like the Democrat and Veterans Party, that they sit with us and see the credibility that I've got to help them. I'm not here to. I don't want to be a politician. I'm too old. But when it comes to helping people to get good people that act with honour, trust, integrity, and accountability, that's my aim. Is to help people, good people, to turn the direction of politics around so that these people are accountable. That's what needs to be done.
Thank you,
If
Gordon.
there's more people like you, Gordon, the world would be a better place, because the information is there. As I said to you before, it's people. The information's there. All they've got to do is come, read it. You're giving it away for nothing. You can't. The platforms that we're getting now is because people know that everything that we've always been doing doesn't work. So
exactly. Let's do it
people
different.
are looking at something different, and this is what I feel is happening now. Me, Andy, and Jason were all talking about this over the weekend. That it seems that there's a light has just seemingly gone on in quite a few people. We had a guy called Michael Feely on last night, who's ex-police, who you were saying about the meat and potatoes of this country. And the police that are in the force right now haven't got a clue.
No, they haven't. If you see the footage that is on YouTube, when I went to the BBC with John Patterson, who has been a magnificent fielder of my information when he came with me on the 1st of the 3rd, 2015 and the 1st of the 3rd, 2016. The police were waiting for us. They had the barriers up and everything. And eventually I got escorted through the barriers to go and speak inside the BBC headquarters. When I laid it out in documents there, I said, never mind going to Angola or the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Just get on a bike and go round to Finchley Road. There's enough material, if you do some research there, to shut them all down. But then I also said that the Director General of the BBC, Anthony William Hall, was a leading Freemason out of Painters Hall 8 and 9 Little Trinity Lane in London, where Anglesey Mining PLC directors operate multiple Ponzi scams as Freemasons. But I don't want to go down the Masons route. I've been there.
I'm so glad I'm sat down, because I'm absolutely shocked.
Another gentleman who was linked with Anglesey Mining was the Welsh Secretary in the Thatcher government. That was the gentleman.
Yes, that's right.
He's known as Lord Quick Howell, or Nicholas Edwards when he was an MP. And if you he was the director of Anglesey Mining in the early 1990s when we aver that nuclear waste was dumped in Paris mountain mine. And also at that time, you'll find that there was a director, Hugh Morris. If you look, he's now deceased Canadian gentleman who was lived in the Vancouver area. But if you check his company directorships, you will also see that he was a director of the World Nuclear Council at the same time that he was at the time that he was also a director of Anglesey Mining. Now, I'd just like to give a little shout out to an excellent website going back to Lord Crickhowell, Nicholas Edwards, website Dr. Sally Baker. So that's Delta Romeo Sierra Alpha Lima Yellow Bravo Alpha Kick Echo Romeo, drsallybaker.com. And if you had a look yesterday, she had an article on the website. She specialises in exposing all the historical child abuse that happened out of North Wales. And she had an excellent article yesterday alleging that Lord Crickhowell, Nicholas Edwards, that he was implicit along with many other politicians in that part of the world in covering up the historical child abuse that took place in that part of the world. So it all links in, and if you want to check Exaro News, for example, and check that was linked to, I believe it was Sparta Media Group, wasn't it, Gordon? And if you check Mark Watts, who was the one who he was sort of a journalist who did the programs at Exaro News. But if you check all his other co-directors, then we can show that they all link back to the same company registration agents that are part of the whole oil, gas and mining fraud. So you really have to appreciate that just the interlocked nature of all of this is just absolutely incredible and just blows your mind away when you just look at and pour through Companies House documents after Companies House documents.
Can I just slip an additive to that? Is that I went and attended the Nottingham Moot for the UK column or the British Constitution group with Brian Garish, and I gave about 4-minute speech in that. However, I watched Belinda Mackenzie moving in and out of the crowd, gathering names for donations. And then I also noticed that a woman approached me saying that she was an ex-intelligence officer and said I was on Rothschild's 10 most wanted hit list. I find that greatly gratifying.
That doesn't surprise me at all, Gordon. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting you with it. And this list of filth and corruption would go on not just all night but all week probably. But we're going to have to draw.
We could go on for a year with you if we had the broadcast.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the world isn't like that, but we could do, believe you me.
We're going to get you back on again real soon. I'll liaise with your guys and we'll get you back on again. Before we wrap up, could you just give us details of where people can find your work, website, Facebook groups, and any way of anyone contacting you if they've got information they wish to share with you, Gordon, please?
Yeah, look, I said my email is in lowercase Romeo Alpha Foxtrot, Bravo Oscar Whiskey Delta Echo November at yahoo.co.uk, where anybody can give me a call. If they want to give me a call, it's 07949 388 908. That's my mobile number. And if anybody wants to chat, or if anybody from the Democrat and Veterans Party want to give me a shout, I'm there for them. And any member of the public, if you want to find out anything more about Pandora's box, just type in 788 790 Finchley Road. You'll see a mugshot of me. Mind you, I put a few kilograms on.
Brilliant, Gordon. Thank you so much. And thank you to each and every one of your team who's been on tonight. I'll name them if I can.
Of course you can.
We've had Andrew, we've had Gareth, we've had Joanne, Stevie, and Dave Veach, and we did try and get Pete Bromfield on. I called both the Skype accounts that I've got for him. I can't remember how many times. Sorry, Pete. We will get you on next time. We'll arrange something so that you're free. Thanks to everyone for listening tonight, because we've had a real big crowd in. I can thank you, Gordon, because I'm sure
thank you.
Doing
thank you
no
for the
small
platform.
part to you that we've had the biggest live listener crowd that we've ever had since we started Raconteurs News.
Well,
So
that's
thank
brilliant.
You,
Thank you.
Thanks for all the great contributions from the chat room and from Facebook. Love you guys. We'll be back next week. I don't know what's coming up for Monday. There's nothing penciled in there yet. But on Tuesday, we've got a good friend of mine called Steve Meara coming on. And he will be telling us all about his new social media site that he's setting up. And it's something quite different and unique. So look forward to that. Hopefully Jason will be back in the saddle, because I'm sure you'll all have missed him and his 8:30 rant tonight.
And do you not think that Jason should have the last word, seeing as that's the first Raconteurs news show in my memory that there hasn't been one swear word?
So I can alter that.
The last word.
Well, I would also like to thank you as well, Paul. Jason, if you want to come in and say a quick word before we go, that's fine. If not, not a problem.
Listen, I'm feeling a lot better. I've felt better throughout the day. I think I had a reaction to the antibiotics that were on for that piss infection that I had. So I'm hoping that I've cleared up. So I'm feeling a lot better. And next Monday we'll have a show, definitely. And like you said, we've got Tuesday as well. So great show tonight, fellas. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everybody, all your listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon, and all of his team. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, everybody who's listening. And if you like what you're hearing, please spread the word and tell your friends. That's how word gets round, because the social media blocks us at each and every turn. So thanks, everyone, and good night.
Florence Nightingales, not enough Robin Hoods. Too many halos, not enough heroes coming up with the goods. So you thought you'd like to change the world, decided to stage a jumble sale. For the poor. So you thought you'd like to change the world, decided to stage a jumble sale. For the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking a box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Flag Day, Flag Day. Too many hands and too many pockets, not enough hands-on hearts. Too many ready to call it a day before the day starts. So you thought you'd like to see them here, got Blue Peter to start an appeal. For the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know